the lefties are happy with the idea of workers not working for free or no return. But what about people who invest their capital? Do they expect people who invest capital to actually do that for no return or capped returns? Well, if they do, they're in cloud cuckoo land. So rent capping is here. What does that mean for landlords? How does that differ from rent controls? What can we learn from the way rent capping has been implemented in Scotland and in other countries? And what are the options for buy-to-let landlords? To explore all that, I'm joined by Andrew Roberts. Hi, Andrew.
Hi, Ranjan. Isn't it just northern landlords that wear rent caps?
Looks like rent caps are here for everybody. So let's just cover the difference between rent control and rent capping. Now, Labour said they were against rent controls. We're not having those. That's where, say, a one-bedroom flat in Hounslow that has a capped rent. Beyond a certain price point, you can't rent out a one-bedroom flat in Hounslow for anything more than that set allowance. We're not having that. What we've got is rent capping. So for a duration of a tenancy, the rate of increases are basically capped according to certain mechanisms and formulas. So what do we think about all of this?
Tosh, absolute tosh. I mean, come on. It's been done in Ireland, it's been done in Scotland. Didn't work. Have we not learned what works and what doesn't work, Labour? Come on. It's not that it's hidden information, it's public domain.
It diminishes supply, and I think people have got to get back to the fundamentals here. At the end of the day, why does a landlord invest in a rental property? And I mean invest in a rental property because you have a certain amount of capital and you have a certain amount of choice as to what to invest it in. So if you are now saying that to invest or keep capital tied up into a property, your returns are going to be capped and are not going to be an open market, then that is fundamentally unfair. Now, the other way I tackle this is that one of the things that we advocate on this channel, and one of the things that we've both done in the past, is look for areas where growth will outpace the national growth. And that may be because of new transport links, that may be because a new hospital is opening up and there are more rental opportunities to those hospital staff. It could be because it's a regeneration area and it's attracted government money. So of course, as that area grows, that will grow at a different rate to neighbouring areas and the average areas. But you have chosen to invest in that area, so shouldn't you, because you're riding that risk as well, benefit from increased returns? So are these rents going to be capped nationally, irrespective of hotspots?
Well, you're talking about what I describe as following the politics, not the prices of the property market. And following the politics is where you can make the big leaps. And that's a great point, well made, Ranjan. So from my perspective, if you've got these rent caps and rent controls, does that mean that interest rates will also be capped and controlled? Because if interest rates go up, your margins would go down. So you become less profitable again.
Exactly. And, there has to be an element. I mean, the whole issue with rent capping and control will be addressed if there is more supply. And there will be more supply in the housing market and also the rental market if landlords are encouraged to keep property available for rental. Now, I think what the lefties fail to understand is that the lefties, and there's a whole bunch of legislation about workers' rights, a bill of workers' rights, minimum wage at every age group, and all this sort of minimum wage linked to the inflation and cost of living. All of that is proposed. Great. So what we're saying is the lefties are happy with the idea of workers not working for free or no return. But what about people who invest their capital? Do they expect people who invest capital to actually do that for no return or capped returns? Well, if they do, they're in cloud cuckoo land, because everywhere where they've tried to do this, people have withdrawn their capital.
Well, I think the other thing to look at here, because we're talking about just the capital side of it, there are landlords who are full-time landlords. That is their job. And if their job now has a cap on it, where they can't actually increase the money because national minimum wage, inflation, living costs have gone up, they could end up below the poverty line and needing benefits.
So, are you aware of any country where rent capping or rent control has actually worked?
No. I can't think of a single one where it's worked.
I mean, the evidence is that it does deliver some very short-term benefits for the immediate tenants, but is no good for the general housing market or tenants after that first tenancy. One thing it will encourage people to do is, it will encourage landlords to do, that is to make sure their rents are at market rent at all times. How many times have you had a tenant in for 3-4 years, they've been nice, they've been good, and you've kept the rent the same, and you know that they're not paying market rent, but you've accepted that situation, or you're happy with that situation because of the way they keep the property. Now, if the annual rate of increase is going to be capped, that is really, really financial suicide for you not to implement full rent increases each and every year. Otherwise, the rental value of your property will fall behind, and when you go to remortgage, you will be hit by how much refinancing you can get if you haven't maintained rent at market levels.
I absolutely totally agree with Ranjan on all of those points. But what we should also do is look to other markets where they've brought in these rent caps. And if we look at, say, Scotland, to pick a territory that's not a million miles from home, oh, actually it is part of the United Kingdom. So Scotland has rent caps. What has happened is at the end of each 6-month, 12-month tenancy, AST, the tenant is moved on. The property is repriced to market rent, and that tenant stays for 6 months, 12 months, and then the property is rebased again to the new market rent. So the landlord is sticking within the rules, which is to respect the price capping, as in the rent cap, but they just move the tenant on. So that causes the tenants a greater cost in terms of the turbulence, moving their perhaps children's schools, removal costs, disturbance, the fact that you don't have a home. So all you're doing is you're creating a medium-term problem that, okay, you've solved for the first round of rent increases. Labour, come on. Is that what you really want? It's a hidden cost making them move.
In the US of A, in Democrat-controlled states where they've tried to bring rent controls or rent cappings in, such as New York and San Francisco, it's been an absolute disaster. Absolute disaster. What it's meant is that housing supply has diminished. Because, to put it mildly, if you have got a property and you're in a capped area, then you've got to think whether or not you're going to maintain that property in that area or just withdraw your capital from that. And the big problem at the moment in the UK is that rent capping will disproportionately affect new rental housing supply in high value areas. Now let me just explain why. If a new landlord, say, let's pick London as a high value area, if a new landlord wants to buy a buy-to-let property in London, the average house price in London is more than double the national average, something like £650,000. So you've got to pay 3% additional stamp duty on that. So you're in for 30-40 grand of stamp duty just to buy a buy-to-let property in London, plus 25% deposit. It's unviable. That's why people aren't buying new buy-to-let properties in high-value areas. They're picking lower value areas. So, no new housing supply in the rental market, and people who have had them, say, for 10, 20 years, you want to retain those guys. But instead, if someone has got a property they've had for 10 years, it's got a lot of equity in, the return on the equity they've got invested in the property, if it's capped, it's not worthwhile to keep it in there. You can argue a case for saying, well, take it out and stick it in a high interest account.
Well, and all that's going to do is collapse the housing market itself. And we're going to see a two-tier house prices appearing on the radar if rent caps occur. Because it's going to cause houses which are in rental to have a lower value than those that are in the homeowner marketplace. So what do you think should be happening here with rent caps? Do you think they should be introduced? Or do you think there's better ways than Scotland are perhaps using to actually control those rent increases, or to, if you're a landlord, to increase the rents?
I think it'd be interested to know in your comments below, but from a landlord's perspective, the way of sorting the rental crisis is simply to have
Build
more supply.
houses. Yeah.
Allow more houses to be built, have more supply, and offer landlords incentives. Don't put in barriers for provision of rental housing, because we need a private rented sector for a strong economy, full stop. If you don't have free movement of labour, it's very, very difficult, and private rented housing is a key part of that. But I think from a landlord's point of view, if you've got single family housing, which rents to a family, say, where people tend to stay longer term, then you're going to be stuffed by rent capping.
Yeah.
But if you are providing housing where it is not designed to stay in there for years, such as HMOs, or studio apartments, or one-bedroom flats, for example. Those sort of properties, people rarely stay in for, say, 4 or 5 years, like they would do a single-family house.
Yeah.
And you'll be less affected by this because you'll have more tenant turnover, which means you've got ability to increase rents to market levels in between tenancies. But in properties where people are going to stay forever, you're going to see that two-tier pricing that you talked about.
If you have got an opinion or a view on rent caps and rent controls, either drop your comment below or come and visit Ranjan and I at the Baker Street Property Meet and come and discuss your thoughts and views with us there, and an audience of 300 plus landlords every single month. We meet in central London, and it is one of the best events globally in the property sector. If you've not been there, why not? Join us, bakerstreetpropertymeet.com.
And of course, Baker Street Property Meet is now in its 10th year. And guess what? Ticket prices have been capped. So no increases there, folks. Join us at our next Baker Street Property Meet. Get your tickets at bakerstreetpropertymeet.com.